Well, the Michigan football season got underway on Saturday night, and not the way the Wolverines wanted to start the season. 41-14 down in Arlington, Texas. Michigan came out, and really right from the get-go, Alabama pretty much set the tempo. The Wolverines started on the defensive side of the ball. They got a nice 3-and-out. They came back, weren't able to move the ball. And then Alabama was able to open up a 7-0 lead, a nice drive for them. Again, Michigan is stopped. Alabama builds up another drive, 14-0, and then there's a turnover from Denard Robinson. And just like that, first quarter, it's already 21-0. And after all the hype that had been put into this game, how maybe Alabama, definitely the favorite, Michigan maybe had a chance, that pretty much was out the window in one quarter, and that's how good that Alabama team was on Saturday night. Now, looking at some of the things that Michigan did, it wasn't an impressive night for them. Obviously, you can look at the scoreboard and say that, 41-14, but, I mean, we look at the stats a little bit. Denard Robinson, he was expected to come into this season and be a better passer for the Wolverines. And one of the things he struggled with last year, throwing off his back foot, interceptions, he had 15 of them last year. Well, Denard, 11 for 26 for only 200 yards on Saturday. 2 interceptions, one of them a pick six. And it's interesting to look at because most people would say, well, Denard, you haven't improved. But you have to remember, he's facing an Alabama defense that's probably by the end of the year, no doubt will be in the top 5, but probably the #1 defensive team in the nation. Obviously, LSU will have something to say about that and a couple other SEC teams. But Alabama, a great defense. So when you look at Denard and his performance, you can't just base it all on him not improving through the offseason because there's no doubt he made strides. Al Borges talked about it. He's talked about it all summer long, about Denard getting better. Robinson has talked about how he needs to develop his game more. So 11 for 26, not a good game, obviously. 2 interceptions. Some of the positives for Robinson, he threw a couple of nice balls. One of them, a long touchdown pass to Gallen. He was able to bring that in for the Wolverines. Also, a pass to Devin Gardner. And those were the only 2 touchdowns of the game, the only points for Michigan, and they came off the pass from Robinson. That clearly was the mindset of Alabama to come out this game, force Robinson to pass, and they did just that. And again, he struggled, but you have to credit Alabama. Their defense so tough, their safeties lining up, or check that their cornerbacks lining up with Michigan's receivers, whether it's Roy Roundtree, Jeremy Gallen, or Devin Gardner, they all seemed physically stronger and bigger than the Michigan receivers. The only one, surprisingly, that held his ground out there to me looked like was Devin Gardner. And Devin Gardner, of course, we know, 6'4". He's a quarterback. This is his first game ever in college playing wide receiver, and he had the best game for Michigan. He caught a couple of balls. Denard threw his way a lot. And that's it's surprising and it's not surprising at the same time. When you look at his physicality, 6'4", over 200 pounds, he's a big guy, and he could match up against those Alabama cornerbacks. Roy Roundtree, a slot receiver, he struggled, and that was apparent. He only had 2 catches, check that, 2 catches for 12 yards in that game on Saturday night. The story, though, coming into the game was the defensive line for Michigan. Michigan has to replace Mike Martin, Ryan Van Bergen, the 2 defensive tackles, the hole pluggers, the stoppers up front last season. Quentin Washington and Will Campbell, the 2 guys that had to come in and do that. Again, the first series of the game, defensively for Michigan, it looked like they had a chance because they came out, they got pressure on A.J. McCarron, who had a phenomenal game, by the way. They got pressure on him, got to the quarterback. Eddie Lacy had a run that was stopped short. The defensive line was getting in there and making noise. Now, as it was said, as the game went on, really the top offensive line in the nation flexed its muscles, and that's Alabama's offensive line. They really pushed around the Michigan defensive line, and that was the key coming into the football game on Saturday, whether Michigan's inexperienced defensive line could match up against one of the best offensive lines, and it surely didn't, and it showed. And then you flip to the defensive side of the ball for Alabama. Well, they seem to dominate defensively as well. Michigan not able to run the ball very much. Denard Robinson, what has he been known for ever since he's been a college quarterback? It's been rushing and how fast he's been able to use his speed, his shiftiness to get the Wolverines their points. And that game on Saturday, 10 carries for 27 yards. Now, a lot of criticism has gone out this week on Al Borges, the offensive coordinator for the Wolverines, on why he didn't run Robinson more in that game. He said it was because Alabama wasn't allowing them, and I think he's absolutely correct. And Alabama was not allowing Michigan to let Denard Robinson run. They didn't want to let him beat him with their feet. And Borges touched on it more, saying that he didn't want Robinson running 20 to 25 times against Alabama because he probably wouldn't be standing today. And that's correct. That's absolutely correct. As Robinson, the defense, when you look at the defense for Alabama, they're big, they're physical, and Denard playing in his first game, you don't want him getting beat up going into not even into the Big Ten schedule. I mean, they still have Air Force to play, they have Notre Dame to play, and then the Big Ten schedule. So what I'm getting at is you don't want to injure your quarterback the first week of the season and pretty much lose your chances at a Big Ten title, because let's be honest, if Denard Robinson goes down for Michigan, they will not compete for the Big Ten championship. It's not going to happen. Russell Bellamy, the second-string quarterback, we saw one snap from him. It was an interception. Clearly, again, against an Alabama defense, however, it was their second string, but clearly they need Denard Robinson. So I like what Borges did. I'll back him up 100%, saying that it was the right move not to run Robinson all night because he wasn't going to have success against Alabama. They're too quick and too big defensively, and Denard would have struggled. So instead, they come out with a different game plan, Denard throwing the ball, and he made some nice passes. There was a couple passes to Jeremy Gallen, again, the long bombs down the field. Really, the wide receiver screen was what seemed to be working early for Michigan, where they just throw it out in the flats. They picked up 7 or 8 yards. I believe they ran that 2 or 3 times, and it was positive. Now, Robinson, he's always struggled throwing the ball 15 to 20 yards downfield. We saw that again to start on Saturday, and that's going to have to change, because if Michigan wants a chance to win the Big Ten title, which is their goal, Robinson's going to have to be able to throw the ball. This team cannot be one-dimensional, because if you're any of the opponents on Michigan's schedule upcoming, looking at that game on Saturday night, you're going, okay, we're going to stack the box, and we're going to make Denard Robinson throw the ball. And Robinson showed he was capable of throwing the ball last year, but not in one-dimensional games. When Michigan had to throw the ball and their run game wasn't working, if you look back at last season, there was 2 games where Michigan could not establish a run game. One of those, Iowa, that was a loss. The other one, their rival Michigan State, that was a loss. So that's something that has to change. Denard has to be able to throw the ball if Michigan can't run the ball, because if you go looking in that Michigan State game, looking ahead, obviously, the Spartans are going to be able to have everyone back on defense. They should have an opportunity to stop Michigan's run. By that time and point in the season, when Michigan is well into their Big Ten schedule, and that game is October 20th, and we look at the schedule, that's 6 games away. That's got to be enough time. Robinson in his senior season, he's got to be able to throw the ball. And even in that Notre Dame game coming up, Denard, he's going to have to throw the ball. The run game should be there. But the point that I'm getting at, again, Denard, he's just got to improve. He's got to improve, and you have to have that feeling in your back pocket that you have to know that Robinson, you have to trust him that he's going to be able to throw the ball if Michigan can't get their run game going. Speaking of the run game, it was not there for the Wolverines. Vincent Smith and Thomas Rawls, the 2 backs that were there to carry Michigan, because Fitzgerald Toussaint, the starting running back, was out because of the DUI he was charged with. Brady Hoke suspending him and Frank Clark, the defensive end, for a game. So no Fitzgerald Toussaint, but we heard Brady Hoke say this. I don't think it would have mattered if Fitzgerald Toussaint was in the game. The offensive line simply got ran over. Taylor Lewan, the big left tackle, he struggled, and he's expected to be a top 10 draft pick if he comes out next season, which we're not sure if he will, but he hasn't always been the best player. The 2 years under Rich Rodriguez, he struggled. He had high expectations. He had penalties, and it was long seasons for him. Well, that Saturday night game, he racked up 3 penalties, left the game injured. He should be fine, they said, for the Air Force game this Saturday, but a struggle for Taylor Lewan, and he's got to get back on pace. Michigan's best offensive lineman by far, and they need him back. They need him playing at his best. A change before the game started. Elliot Mueller started at the center for the Wolverines instead of Ricky Barnum. He was pushed over to the right side. But really, the defensive line just too strong for Alabama. They played that 3-4 defense. And the problem was they had success getting to the Wolverines without even blitzing. Michigan tried again to develop a game plan where they would run off the tackle or outside of the tackle box and trying to beat Alabama down the speed, going right to left, running sweeps. That didn't work. They tried to go up the middle towards the end of the game. Just no luck for the Wolverines. I believe their biggest run was 20 yards, and that was Vincent Smith. The problem with Vincent Smith, he's too small, and he's not fast enough. If you're a small guy, you've got to be fast. Thomas Rawls, he's inexperienced. He's a big bulldozer kind of back, 260 pounds, low to the ground, but it was his first game. He's facing, again, the top team in the country, and maybe not the top team, but probably the top defense as well, and he's getting thrown in the mix his first game. There's going to be some jitters. You had to expect that Michigan wasn't going to be able to run the ball with those guys, but that's where you thought maybe Robinson would have a chance, but there was nothing for him. So we saw that no run game at all for Michigan, and with a run-prone quarterback, that spells trouble because Robinson struggled passing the ball, obviously, and Michigan, again, they came in the underdogs. They weren't expected to win, but they shouldn't have put out the performance that they did against Alabama. It shouldn't have been a 41-14 game, and it was kind of embarrassing to watch as a Michigan fan. You think, well, Alabama's obviously got the upper hand. They have a stronger team. They've got better running backs right now. Their quarterback a little more established, throwing the ball. Their defense obviously one of the best last year, and they're returning a lot of guys. Offensive line has proven itself. So Michigan knew coming in that they were the underdog, but they didn't play Michigan football, as Brady Hoke put it, and they were disappointed, as they should have been. It was a big event on nationally televised TV. It was embarrassing to watch Michigan play the way that they did, and there's no one else who is more excited to get back onto the field this week than the Michigan Wolverines, and I can guarantee you that after every team played Saturday, no team got beat that bad on national television. And the Wolverines will be ready on Saturday, and they need to be because there's a tough team coming to Michigan Stadium as the Wolverines open up their home opener against the Air Force Falcons. And this team, an academy team that likes to run the triple option. Many of the academy teams, you see that with Navy, Army, Air Force as well, triple option, and they're good at it. Air Force, a very solid team. They played Idaho State in their first game at home, 49-21 winners. A good running back for them, Cody Getz. He ran for 218 yards, scored 3 touchdowns. They also have a very capable quarterback who can run and throw, not as quick as Denard, but he's very good through the air. And Air Force, they didn't really need to pass, though, on Saturday. Idaho State, they were stuck with that triple option. Air Force pretty much able to run the entire game. So that's something to look out for on Saturday. Can Dietz throw the ball with success against the Michigan defense? And can they have that running attack that they did on Saturday? Dietz rushed for 74 yards and 142 yards passing. Again, he didn't do much, but Cody Getz, the running back, he pretty much carried the team for Air Force. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's a tough game for the Wolverines coming back after Alabama because that triple option attack, that's always tough. If you make a mistake, one little mistake, it's a huge gain for the offensive side of the ball on the triple option. You have to be very disciplined on defense. But again, I think Michigan steps up and they get back in the win column this weekend. You have to think that they are going to be very motivated for that game. And again, no one else wants to play worse than Michigan does. And we'll see that on Saturday. Again, Also, they're opening in front of 110,000. What more can you want? Some of the freshmen get a taste for the big house for the first time. Injury notes in that Alabama game. One huge loss for the Wolverines. Blake Countess, the sophomore cornerback, started for the Wolverines about 7 games last year, and then obviously started against Alabama. He went out early in that game trying to run down a punt as he was a gunner for the Wolverines. He came up limp early in that first quarter. He is out with torn ligaments. He'll be gone for the season. That's a huge loss for Michigan. One of the keys for them coming back was their cornerbacks and safeties. Their back 7 all coming back. You have Desmond Morgan, the linebacker for the Wolverines, Kenny Demmons, along with Jake Ryan. Very good linebacking core coming back. Then you had Countess on one side, JT Floyd on the other, and then obviously Jordan Kovacs and Thomas Gordon as the safeties, but no more Blake Countess. He is done for the season. That's a huge loss for the Wolverines. Courtney Avery had to step in that Alabama game, and they punished him early. McCarron went right at Courtney Avery, beat him with a couple of quick posts, and then he went deep on him. Courtney Avery falling down, so he's going to have to step up. Greg Madison says, the defensive coordinator for Michigan, though, they trust him, and they know he can do a good job. He just struggled getting thrown into the fire in that Alabama game. So interesting to watch this weekend. Michigan and Air Force, 3:30 at the Big House. I'm taking the Wolverines, big winners this weekend as they bounce back. I think Air Force is going to put up some points, though. Don't be fooled. It's always tough to face a team that does something that you don't practice against every day. And Michigan, they haven't seen a lot of the triple option. And the Wolverines still working out their defensive kinks, and the defensive line, they've got to get some momentum and kind of get used to each other and get into the field of play. So I think they're going to struggle a little bit. I think Air Force will put up some points. I'm saying probably 13 to 17 points Michigan will give up. But I think the Wolverines get back to their bread and butter. Denard Robinson running the ball. Fitzgerald Toussaint is back this week. And those two are going to have a field day. Robinson will also throw a couple of touchdown passes. But I think in the end, it's a big day at the Big House for the Michigan, a bounce-back day. I'll take the Wolverines 35 to 13 over the Air Force Falcons on Saturday. Michigan would move to 1-1 on the season. Air Force would be 1-1 as well. But that game, going to be a good one. 3:30 at the Big House, Michigan Stadium. And that is this Saturday as the Wolverines try and bounce back against Air Force.